All right, folks. It is Friday, January 30th. Holy crap, is there a lot of stuff to talk about today? I love to see the chat already going, not going crazy in a bad way, crazy in a good way. Tons of people already talking it up. We've got UK, we've got Denmark, we've got some New Zealand, I think I saw in there, and of course, all over the United States. And a lot of people already talking in the chat about Don Lemon. And yes, I do have that story slated for today's stream. I will get to that. We got Germany, the frozen hell of Michigan. There's a lot. There's so much to talk about today that I actually cut out a bunch of stories just because, good heavens, I don't even think we could get to everything. I mean, we've got a potential government shutdown at midnight. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. I think it should. I hope it does. Democrats had 7 Republicans, later 8, join them in voting no for Department of Homeland Security funding. And then, of course, Chuck Schumer was like, "Well, we're gonna fund them for like 2 weeks." So who the hell knows what all these idiots are going to do. By the way, that is actually one of the stories I cut out today because everything's kind of changing so quickly with it. I think by the time we even talk about it, it's going to be different because we're dealing with maybe the dumbest people ever to run Congress. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're going to do. They don't know what they should do. They are not paying attention to what the public wants them to do. But shut it down. Absolutely shut it down. And of course, we're going to talk about MAGA turning against Donald Trump for the dumbest reason imaginable. But before I even get into any of the real stories, what do you think? What do you think? I know y'all noticed the difference. Studio looks different, right? I hope you're enjoying it. I hope the feed is a little better. No longer using the old school camera for it. We're using this. If the feed doesn't look any better, it's not the camera. It is, of course, my god-awful internet that I have here at home. But yeah, so changed up the coloring a little bit. We've got a light back here doing different stuff. So yeah, it's fun. It's new. Just wanted to point it out because nobody had said anything yet. We worked real hard on it. So, no, that's obviously the least important thing of the day. Let's get right into it, right? I've bored you guys enough with random stuff already. MAGA is threatening to turn against Donald Trump, according to a new report from the Washington Post, because they're angry. They're angry about his policies, but they're not angry about the fact that they still can't afford groceries, right? That's kind of an afterthought now that a Republican's in the White House. When it's a Democrat, that's the biggest issue. But when a Republican is in there and grocery prices continue to go up above what they already said was unacceptable, that's okay because a Republican's there. They're not mad about his tariff policies. They're not mad about, whatever's going on with him in Venezuela, his threats against Cuba. No, they're mad that he's not going to be as mean about his immigration policies and that we might not see any more American citizens brutally murdered on our streets. MAGA is threatening to withhold their support from Donald Trump and, of course, Republicans in the midterms if he pulls out of Minnesota. They love the chaos. They love the violence. They love the bloodshed. How dare he back off whatever the hell it is he's doing, because even he doesn't know why he's there. We've gotten 3 different reasons from this administration. But here is what the Washington Post reported. 60% of Republicans say they have a great deal or quite a lot of confidence in ICE, highlighting the gap between Trump's own party and independents and Democrats. And the president's sudden interest in cooperating with Waltz and Frey and his suggestions about going easy on longtime immigrant workers have amounted to a rug pull for the base in his rhetoric, per right-wing Rasmussen reports pollster Mark Mitchell. As a consequence, the report said, the most recent flood of criticism has come from pro-Trump users online and top influential MAGA commentators. Some called Trump's pivot a betrayal. Others warned, as they have about other issues for months, of the risk that the base could sit out November's elections. Longtime MAGA ally Steve Bannon set the tone for this dynamic, accusing the White House of blinking after the death of Alex Preddy. So if Donald Trump does in fact do this supposed drawdown of ICE agents in Minnesota, they're going to sit out the election. Oh, God. I don't know about you, but I don't know that I have ever heard of a better win-win situation for the entire United States of America. We don't need thousands of ICE agents patrolling the streets in Minnesota. There is not enough for them to do. And we know that there's not enough for them to do because there's so little for all these ICE agents to do that Trump has sent them over to Italy to act as security for the U.S. delegation at the Olympics. They're bored. Kind of like when he first came back into office and we sent all those people down to the border, right? And then they had nothing to do. We had the National Guard folks going down to the border. This was before Trump even got into office. And interviews with those folks said, we have nothing to do. This so-called problem doesn't actually exist. And it's the same thing in Minnesota. So that's why you see videos where nobody's being arrested other than, protesters being pepper sprayed and, gas bombed and sometimes shot. But it's just ICE agents doing nothing. Like, you can't interfere with our business, as there's 30 ICE agents just standing there like fat lumps on a sidewalk. And now MAGA's saying, if you take these fat, cancerous tumors out of Minnesota, we're going to sit out the midterms. Well, don't threaten us with a good time, buddies. I would love to see that happen. But I would also love for you idiots to explain to the entire world why you're so callous, heartless, and just downright fucking evil. Because that's what you are. Nothing is being accomplished in Minnesota. Not once have you idiots defending this pointed to statistics like, well, they got all these people right here, and this one was doing this bad stuff, and this one now, nothing. You can't do that because it doesn't exist. But they instead insist that this is a success, insist that this is normal and good and proper. And yet, when pressed for any specifics or any details or any evidence, not a single human being on the right side of American politics, and I don't mean the correct side, I mean on the right, not one of them can provide any of that because it doesn't exist. Some comments going through here. Terry Allen Jr. says, voter ID situation must be scare at. Okay, unfortunate typo there because I'm not exactly sure. But yeah, the voter ID situation throughout the United States does have to be addressed. If Republicans insist on doing voter ID, as I've always said, that's fine. But voting is a right. You can't just take somebody's right away willy-nilly because they don't have cash. Therefore, if you institute voter ID, the government has to provide free of charge a photo ID for every single person in the United States. And if somebody is unable to leave their house due to, injury, disability, or whatever it is, then the government has a responsibility to go to that person's house, take their photo, and then hand deliver them their ID. If the government is willing to do that for every single human being in the United States for absolutely no charge, then sure, use voter ID, right? Oh, and you also, by the way, have to replace them free of charge, limitlessly. So y'all want to do that, then sure. But otherwise, you cannot say that, oh, well, you can't leave your house, therefore you lose your right to vote. You can't do that. That is absolutely an unalienable right. You cannot take it away. So That is my take on voter ID. Absolutely. If you want to do it, sure. But you better be prepared to absorb all of the costs that come along with it before you try to strip people of their rights. Super chat here says, my heart is breaking today for little Liam Ramos. He had fallen ill in that horrible detention center, praying for his speedy recovery. Yeah, that story, it's both heartbreaking and one of the most infuriating stories I think I've had to cover in a long, long time. It's just it's pure evil. I mean, again, I go back to that phrase, but my God, there is no other way to say it. It is, in fact, pure evil. Listen, a lot of folks in the chat talking about Don Lemon. So let's go ahead. I actually had it last up today because it was the last story I found. We're going to go ahead and we're going to talk about Don Lemon right now. So former CNN host Don Lemon was arrested Thursday evening in California for his alleged role in the protesters who went into a Minnesota church, yelled at the pastor because he was a member of ICE, and then left. Because they were not arrested at the time. Okay? They went in, yelled at the guy, and left. And the leaving part, right, not being physically there anymore, is very important. But Don Lemon was initially one of the people that Donald Trump blamed for this, although he did not, orchestrate it. He didn't organize it. He was there covering it for his podcast. So Trump wanted Lemon arrested. And initially they tried to do it. They brought charges against him, and the magistrate judge in Minnesota looked at him and laughed and said, this is fake. No, I'm not going to do this. Get the hell out of here. So the charges fell apart. But now apparently they've decided, we don't care that the judge said we can't. We're going to do it anyway. And we don't know exactly what we're going to charge you with, but we're going to find something. And the irony here, of course, is that after Lemon had been reporting on this, because he was, right there with them, he even told reporters that he's like, they're going to find something to charge me on. They're going to literally create something to charge me with. So, I'm expecting them to eventually arrest me. And he was right. They did. Now, let's see if these stick. I have to imagine it's probably not going to end any differently than it did the first time. But this administration, we're not going to let things like legal orders get in our way when we're trying to criminally prosecute Donald Trump's political enemies. So we have to look at what the charges are against the other protesters, right? The people that did go into the church, the people that did yell some things, and then again, were no longer in the building shortly after that. They were charged with three separate things: conspiracy to deprive rights, interfering with religious freedom in a house of worship, and intimidation or obstruction of people participating in a service. None of those are real. Conspiracy to deprive rights of people exercising their freedom of religion. They were not depriving anyone of their rights. So right off the bat, and that's why I bring up they left. They were gone from the bit. They didn't stay there and say, you can't have church because we're just going to stay here forever. That didn't happen. So charge number one, out the window. And I imagine, by the way, they're going to try to do the same thing to Don Lemon on these things. So the second one, interfering with religious freedom in a house of worship. They were not in any way interfering with the practice of a religion. That didn't happen. They were not there to attack the religion. They were there to expose the pastor. A pastor is not in and of itself as a human being the religion. So no, that charge is gone. Intimidation or obstruction of people participating in a service. The obstruction, maybe, but then again, is that a crime? I know that's what they've put on the charging documents, right? But is that a crime? Is that an actual real crime? If I walk in, because I'm Catholic or lapsed Catholic, whatever you want to call it, because I haven't been in decades. If I were to walk into church and Monsignor's up there and he's, doing his homily, and I stand up and I'm like, hey, stop that. I don't like the homily. All right, I'm out of here. Is that obstruction? Is that obstruction of people participating in a service? Because that would effectively be no different than what the protesters did. One of whom, by the way, happens to be a civil rights lawyer, so she knows her rights. No, like that's not a crime for me to stand up and yell something in the middle of the church. And if it were, I got to tell you, pretty much every non-Catholic denomination down here in the American South would be shut down every single Sunday. I mean, we've seen the videos. We know what goes on at some of these churches down here in the South. There's a lot of yelling. There's a lot of, people getting up and dancing and all kinds of crazy crap. I'm not meaning to offend anybody's religion, so please don't take it as such. But what I'm saying is, why is it okay for a parishioner to have, outbursts in church, but not somebody who's not? How is one obstruction when it does interrupt service and the other is not? None of it makes any sense because these aren't real crimes. These are made up, weird thing. So none of these are going to stick. Somebody just cited a U.S. code in the comments here, 18 U.S. Code, Section 247, damage to religious property, obstruction of persons in the free exercise of religious beliefs. Sure, but were those people not allowed to express their beliefs? No. There was no actual, real, meaningful obstruction that took place. Was there a delay? Sure. Was there a restriction of any kind? No. So none of these people are going to go to jail, Don Lemon included. And I don't even know if they are charging Don Lemon with these same things, but I bring up those original charges against the first group of folks because I do believe it's going to be similar, but it's all going to fall apart, so none of it even matters. None of it even matters because it will fall apart because this is obviously Donald Trump going after his political enemies. So even if the judge doesn't toss it out on its face, there is enough evidence to show that this was politically motivated, not having to do anything with an actual crime being committed by Don Lemon. He was exercising his rights as a journalist. The protesters were exercising their rights as protesters, both protected under that same First Amendment that they're trying to take them down with. Some super chats here. Says, I'm late, but I have to say I learned about the Rebel Loon last night, and I love it. State Bird is a great symbol, and combining it with Star Wars, which is a great study comparison to war and politics. It's all great, is resisting the MAGA cult. Paul Gustafson says, Chief Judge in Minnesota said ICE had violated 96 orders in 73 cases in Minnesota since January 1st. And that's what they found in a quick search, might have missed some. I saw that story too. That was almost laughable at this point that ICE is literally so lawless. They've also detained wrongfully, according to the courts, or illegally, over 2,300 people in the last 6 months, averaging 12.7 people per day, illegally detained by ICE. V-Man says, Farron, I'm terrified for my community. I live in Peekskill, New York, where 13.5% of the population is Ecuadorian. I know it's not a matter of if, but when ICE makes a trip here, and I, Puerto Rican, have to look after my Latino brothers. That is terrifying. I mean, I don't know. This is one of those situations where it's difficult to fully imagine the fear that other people experience when you yourself, don't fear that, and you haven't had to fear it. I mean, I'm a straight middle class white guy. I have never known oppression. I have never been discriminated against. I've never been targeted for the color of my skin, for my ethnicity, for my religion, for anything. So it's very difficult to fully understand and appreciate what others do have to go through when you yourself have not had that yet. And I do clarify that as yet. So it could happen eventually. I do know that I have other fears that you guys may not. I, at this point, almost have a fear of going out in public because of what I do, because I am in a very right wing area and there's a lot of guns in my area and there's a lot of crazy people in my area. So I have a different set of fears. Mine are probably way crazier and less realistic than the fears that you folks have. So I empathize as much as possible. And even still, I can't even begin to wrap my head around it because it's so much worse than what I could even imagine. Continuation of the super chat from Maria says, however, to continue from my earlier appreciation of the Rebel Loon, I also have a concern that Rebel Loon tattoos have become a target signifier for ICE to look for, just bringing possible concern. So, okay, thank you very much for letting everybody know that. Where are we? I want to get the rest of these super chats. Obstruction of a service feels like just Trump crying about hecklers. That's a good point. This reminds me of when that Russian punk band entered a church to protest Putin. They were arrested too and imprisoned on BS charges. And that's what we're becoming. I mean, that is literally what is happening in this country right now. MAGA Mussolini is suing IRS and Treasury over leaking tax returns. In my opinion, he should be adjudicated a vexation litigant for filing frivolous complaints, from Paula Trigg. I agree. I do have a story coming up about that. Not today. It's one of the ones that I've got kind of in the hopper already. But yeah, the idiot's suing his own government again for $10 billion. And yeah. Moondragon says, I think it's time we all rewatch Andor. A friend of mine actually sent me a clip from that the other night that it was kind of like, wow, this is really prescient. I've never seen it. It's not my thing, but I've heard from people that, yeah, in terms of, political reality, things like that, you should probably watch it. I'm probably not going to watch it, just to be honest with you. It's not, I have things that I am into, though, that other people are not. So, to each their own. I'm not trying to, poo-poo on anything that other people like. I'm just not a big fan. Let's move on, because something very weird happened yesterday. And it's not the only time this weird thing has happened yesterday. And it's not the only time this weird thing has happened. On Thursday, Donald Trump held a cabinet meeting. That, of course, was nothing more than all of the people he's picked to run this administration with him sitting there telling him how great and awesome and super cool he truly is. And of course, the whole thing was televised because God forbid Donald Trump do anything when there's not a camera right there to catch every second of his life. This whole thing is literally just the worst reality show that has ever been produced in the history of the United States. That's what we are dealing with this administration, because everything has to be on camera. Everybody has to be camera ready, no matter how hideous and disgusting you look. But during this cabinet meeting, they all took turns, as they always do, telling the camera how awesome Donald Trump is. And each of them, of course, this time specifically had something within their realm of control that they had to praise Trump for. Pete Hegseth praised Trump for Venezuela, and also, by the way, insulted every single person who has ever served in the United States military, ever. Hegseth said this about Trump's sacking of Venezuela. No other military in the world could have executed the most sophisticated, powerful raid, not just in American history, I would say in world history. The kidnapping of dictator Nicolas Maduro was the most successful and the most strategic military operation in the history of the fucking world, according to Pete Hegseth. Sure, there's a lot of D-Day veterans who would like to have a word with Pete Hegseth right about now, because that is insulting to every single person that has ever put on that uniform, past, present, and future. That's how insulting that statement was. He is insulting people that haven't even been born yet with this insane claim. Howard Lutnick, Commerce Secretary, said Trump is, quote, fixing everything. Howard Lutnick praised Trump, saying, "You are fixing everything with your policies. You have changed America and created the golden age." For whom? Who's doing better? Right? I'm not. Y'all aren't. Grocery prices aren't. Cost of literally everything else also not doing well. Even the top 1%, every time Trump gets mad and attacks Jerome Powell on Truth Social, the stock market tanks. They lose a ton of money. He has not fixed anything. He has made everything worse. And by everything, what I mean is, of course, everything. You can't point to a single thing in the United States that's better today than it was a year and a half ago. But these disgusting, pathetic, worthless human beings going around the table telling lies that they know are lies just to keep this giant, dementia-riddled diaper baby happy. Kelly Loeffler, small business administrator, said this: "Under your leadership, you've ended at least 8 wars, but probably the most important and underreported war that this president ended was Joe Biden and the Democrats' war on Main Street and hardworking families." Scott Bessent said, "We've got gains in wages, low prices, and I think 2026 is going to be the year of the Trump boom. It's going to be a supply side boom. I enjoyed the trip out to Iowa. In the diner, the staff there was thanking you for the no tax on tips, and they're expecting big refunds from that." There's nobody in this administration I loathe more than Scott Bessent. And it's because of his arrogance. This multi-millionaire with a net worth of north of $200 million is like, prices are down. No, they're absolutely not, you lying sack of shit. They're not. Wages are up, but the gains in wages have been outpaced by inflation. So even though you may be making more, you're spending even more, to the point where you'd have been better off with no inflation and no wage gains. You'd have more money left in your pocket. You left that part out, you absolute numbskull. They're thanking you for no tax on tips. They're going to get huge refunds for that. Oh, you're making me wish April were already here, buddy. I can't wait. Do you guys realize what kind of videos we are going to see put out from these MAGA supporters that are like, he said no tax on tips and now I still have to pay $8,000 in taxes. Oh, he lied. We were hosed. We've been bamboozled. Who could have seen it coming? Do you know how I know that's going to happen? Because it's already happening with the folks who thought no tax on overtime. And they've been putting out videos like, he lied to us again. Oh, God. Yeah. And he's going to keep doing it. And you're going to keep believing it because you're all deeply stupid people. And you deserve all of the discomfort that you're getting. And I hope you all get screwed. I hope you all get your tax bills after you file and owe tens of thousands of dollars. I hope your lives are ruined the same way you have ruined the lives of so many others with your vote in 2024. You deserve nothing less. I wish for you what you wish for other people. How about that? Then you had Energy Secretary Chris Wright. He said, and this beautiful clean coal was the MVP of the huge cold snap we're in right now. I can say with some confidence, hundreds of American lives have been saved because of your leaning in and stopping the killing of coal and revitalizing coal. I spent over a decade as an environmental reporter. One of the things specifically that I covered was this so-called war on coal talking point from Republicans, and it never existed. It wasn't a thing that actually ever happened. Coal production, coal exploitation in the United States would rise and fall, but not due to policies from any administration, Republican or Democrat. It was due to the fact that sometimes we ended up with what they would call a glut, meaning we got too much coal extracted. So we're going to scale back the companies that fund Republicans and the think tanks that put out these talking points. They scaled back operations because coal was either no longer profitable due to the glut or no longer profitable because it was too expensive. So they would scale back operations and then lay people off. And then the Republicans would be like, oh no, there's a war on coal. Look what Obama did. Look what Biden did. But it wasn't them. It was the companies themselves. Then, to cap it all off, you had Donald Trump promise that he was going to keep housing prices exorbitant for Americans. Millions of Americans have already reported, I'm struggling to afford my rent, I'm struggling to pay my mortgage, and millions more are saying, I can't even afford to buy a house. And Trump came out and literally said, I want to keep housing prices high. Here's what Trump said. Existing housing, people that own their home, we're going to keep them wealthy. We're going to keep those prices up. We're not going to destroy the value of their home so that somebody that didn't work very hard can buy a home. So if you don't own a home, by the way, in the eyes of this a-hole serving as president of the United States, if you don't own a home, it's because you are not a hard worker. Get off your butt, you lazy piece of crap. It's a hell of a message to give to voters in a midterm year, but it is the message that Donald Trump sent out nevertheless. He continued. There's so much talk of, oh, we're going to drive housing prices down. I don't want to drive housing prices down. I want to drive housing prices up for people that own their homes. And they can be assured that's what's going to happen. If you drive housing prices up for existing homeowners, that in no way benefits the homeowner unless they want to sell their house. You've driven the price up. How? I don't know. I mean, you don't necessarily control what a house is valued at during appraisal, but the cost of my house, right? The price of it going up doesn't affect me unless I want to sell it. But it makes it harder for me to sell it if the price has gone up too much. So all the people out there without money who already couldn't afford housing can't buy my house because Trump made the prices go up. It looks good on paper. It's absolutely horrific and devastating in practice. And that's the problem with this administration. Everything looks good on paper. You can make anything look good on paper. But in practice, it all falls apart. But folks, that was the cabinet meeting from Thursday. Fawning, lies, disgusting, like sucking up. I'm sure everybody left there with, the taste of boot in their mouth. But luckily, it was all caught on video because God forbid we miss a single episode of this horrible reality show we're all having to live through. I saw a ton of super chats come through, and folks, to be honest, I'm not going to be able to get to those. I apologize so much. So many came through. We're already 34 minutes into this, and I still have multiple stories left to cover. So I appreciate it. I truly love the support, and I am so sorry that I'm not going to be able to get to those. But I got to move on, because we have some very important things still happening. Kevin Warsh, a man that most of you have probably never heard of until today, if you've already been watching the news. Kevin Warsh has been nominated by Donald Trump to be the next chairman of the Federal Reserve. Kevin Warsh himself worked with the Hoover Institute, conservative think tank. He served in the George W. Bush administration. He has been a governor on the board of the Federal Reserve for quite some time. But during the Bush administration, an administration that was known just as much for their economic destruction of America as they were for their destruction of the Middle East, served as an economic advisor to George W. Bush. So the chairman, the next chairman likely of the Federal Reserve, is a guy that told George W. Bush, hey, you're doing a good job on the economy. And for those of you old enough to remember the Bush years, no, he didn't. So if you have any hope whatsoever that Kevin Warsh is somehow going to be better than Jerome Powell, don't. It's about to be so much worse. And of course, Trump would not pick Kevin Warsh to be the next chairman of the Federal Reserve if he didn't know for a fact that Warsh was going to do exactly what he says. So what is it Trump says? Well, he gave us a taste of it during a midnight meltdown on Truth Social this week where he attacked current Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell. Trump said this: Jerome Too Late Powell again refused to cut interest rates even though he has absolutely no reason to keep them so high. He is hurting our country and its national security. We should have a substantially lower rate now that is even this moron admits inflation is no longer a problem or a threat. Yeah. The only thing worse than that moron would have to be the moron who even put him in power, right? I mean, if you have somebody that's just brain dead stupid, the only person dumber than that would be the person who picks the brain dead stupid person to run something as important as, the economy. But that was you. That was you, Donald. You picked this man that you are now trashing as a moron during your first term. Trump continued. He is costing America hundreds of billions of dollars a year in totally unnecessary and uncalled for interest expense. Because of the vast amounts of money flowing into our country because of tariffs, we should be paying the lowest interest rate of any country in the world. Most of these countries are low interest rate paying cash machines, though thought of as elegant, solid, and prime only because the USA allows them to be. Good God, there's so much more. The tariffs being charged to them while bringing it. Nope. They aren't paying the tariffs. You are. I am. Everybody who purchases things in the United States of America, we're the ones paying the tariffs. So when you're boasting about bringing in hundreds of billions of dollars, that's hundreds of billions of dollars out of our pockets. That's money that is taken out of the U.S. economy. Because instead of spending it on 2 items, we can only buy 1 item. There is less commerce taking place because of your tariffs robbing us of $2,100 on average per month. Or $700 per month, $2,100 a quarter. And that's just as of now. Trump came out this morning on Friday and threatened more tariffs on any country that buys oil from Cuba or does business with Cuba, because Cuba is obviously the next target that he is going to attack. So the amount we're paying, those tariffs, they're about to go up again and again and again and again and again and again and again. Because Donald Trump does believe that the only thing that can fix anything anywhere on the planet is, for some reason, a tariff. And that's why he keeps doing it, even though the value of the dollar just hit, by the way, a 34-year low. Yeah, we're cooked, to put it mildly. One more. We got to give an update on what we know about what happened at the Fulton County election hub this week. As everybody knows, Donald Trump had his administration, Kash Patel's FBI, raid the Fulton County, Georgia election hub. They got into the machines. They got the voting tabulations. They even got the voter rolls. And yesterday, on Thursday, more information came out. The information revealed that Tulsi Gabbard was there. The director of national intelligence, the leader of the American spy agency that pretty much deals exclusively with international stuff, was there. And when I say there, I don't just mean, okay, yeah, she helped sign off on it. No. She was literally physically in the facility with the FBI rummaging through all this stuff in Georgia. And the administration will not tell us why. So we do not know why Tulsi Gabbard was there. That makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. Democratic senators, of course, are demanding answers. Yeah, good luck with that. I mean, I'm not saying you shouldn't demand answers, but when have Democrats in power just demanding answers ever gotten their actual answers, right? Like, you better tell us this. The administration's going to give you one of these and tell you to piss off. But Democratic Senator Mark Warner, again, they should be calling for this, but they shouldn't expect anything. Mark Warner said, he said, injecting the nonpartisan intelligence community she is supposed to be leading into a domestic political stunt designed to legitimize conspiracy theories that undermine our democracy is a serious breach of trust that further underscores why she is totally unqualified to hold a position that demands sound judgment, apolitical independence, and a singular focus on keeping Americans safe. And I agree. I think that's a great statement. I think it's an accurate statement. Tulsi Gabbard had no business being there. But she was, and we do need to know why. Because the going theory is that she's there trying to investigate the right-wing conspiracy theory that Italy was, of course, somehow involved in the stealing of the 2020 presidential election, which, of course, didn't take place. So maybe that's what she was looking at, or maybe they wanted somebody slightly smarter than Kash Patel to kind of oversee things because, let's face it, that guy is dumber than a box of rocks. But that's not the only thing we learned. We also learned that they didn't bother to have a U.S. attorney from the state of Georgia at all do the search warrant. Instead, they got a U.S. attorney from Missouri. A U.S. attorney in Missouri who would theoretically have no jurisdiction in the state of Georgia to sign off on the search warrant. It was U.S. Attorney Thomas Albus, attorney for the Eastern District of Missouri and a recent appointee of Donald Trump. So this whole thing, I don't know if I need to say this or not, stinks to high heaven. It already did before we even knew all of this other new information. But this is about as corrupt and openly corrupt and suspicious as humanly possible. They're not even trying to make it look legit because they don't care, because they know they don't have to. That is how arrogant they have become because, let's face it, they've gotten away with everything over the last year. So why even bother pretending that what we're doing has any legitimate purpose? All right. That's it. That's all I've got, folks. I really, Blue Sky and Threads at Fair and Balance. I'll see you all Monday morning, 9 a.m. Central. Till then, take care of yourself.